When Jonathan Oliver was just 15 years old, he did not have to do homework. He could watch TV if he wanted to, and he also didn't have to worry about a job because his father, a military officer, took care of everything. In other words, he was your typical American teenager. However, Jonathan spent his free time in a way that no one expected, especially not his mother, who would come into his room to find him typing away at his computer late at night. The room was almost completely dark, illuminated only by the glow of the monitor. At first glance, it might seem like Jonathan was playing an online game, spending time with friends, or browsing social media. After all, what else do teenagers do these days? However, what Jonathan was actually doing far from resembled a normal hobby. Instead of having fun or learning something new, he was busy trying to hack into the most secure computer systems in the world. And believe it or not, he was actually quite good at it. At the tender age of 15, Jonathan had already made a name for himself in the hacking world. He used the alias Mafia Boy and successfully managed to penetrate the systems of NASA and the Pentagon, two organizations that are notoriously difficult to infiltrate. The fact that he was able to do this as a teenager was shocking, to say the least. But how did he manage to pull off such a feat? Well, it all started with a simple game. When Jonathan was just 13 years old, he stumbled upon a chat room where people discussed the latest hacking exploits. Intrigued by what he saw, he began to teach himself how to code, and before long, he was able to access some of the biggest corporate networks in the world. However, as you can imagine, this did not go unnoticed, and soon Jonathan found himself in the crosshairs of the FBI. Although they never caught him, the experience left him shaken and determined to lay low for a while. However, Jonathan's thirst for knowledge and excitement eventually got the best of him, and he found himself drawn back to the dark world of hacking. This time, he set his sights on the big leagues, NASA and the Pentagon. Using his newly acquired skills, he managed to breach their firewalls and gain access to their systems. But Jonathan was not content with just causing chaos. He wanted to see just how far he could go, so he did something that no one ever expected. He stole 40 million credit card numbers from NASA alone. As you can imagine, this caused quite a stir. How could someone, let alone a teenager, manage to steal so much data from such secure systems? To make matters worse, Jonathan was not content with just hacking into one system. He went on to hack into 13 different NASA computers, each containing sensitive information that could be used to compromise the security of the entire network. It was like nothing anyone had ever seen before. This is why panic erupted behind closed doors. Was this the work of a foreign government or a rogue nation? Was there a mole within NASA or the Pentagon? Or was it simply a case of extraordinary skill and determination on the part of the hacker? As top officials scrambled to find the answer, they found themselves facing an uncomfortable reality. None of them could even begin to fathom how someone so young could manage to infiltrate their most secure systems. It was like trying to understand the actions of a mythical creature, something that seemed almost otherworldly in its skill and cunning. But as it turned out, there was nothing mythical about Jonathan Oliver. He was just a normal teenager living in a normal suburban home. But how could this be? How could someone who seemed so ordinary manage to achieve what even the best hackers in the world had failed to do? The answer, as it often does, lay in the details. You see, Jonathan was not just a hacker, he was a prodigy. From the moment he was born, it was clear that he was not like other children. He was smarter, more curious, and more determined. And as he grew older, these traits only became more pronounced. Jonathan was not satisfied with just learning what was taught to him in school. He wanted to know more, to understand how things worked, and to push the boundaries of what was possible. This insatiable curiosity led him to the world of hacking, where he quickly made a name for himself as a master of deception and infiltration. But what really set Jonathan apart was his ability to think outside the box. While other hackers relied on brute force or technical know-how, Jonathan used his sharp intellect and creativity to outwit even the most sophisticated security systems. He was able to think like his targets, anticipating their moves and planning his attacks accordingly. This made him virtually impossible to detect, as he was essentially invisible to those he was targeting. But it wasn't just Jonathan's skills that made him such a formidable hacker. It was also his mindset. He was not content with just causing chaos or wreaking havoc. He wanted to understand the systems he was infiltrating, to learn from them, and to improve his craft. This may sound counterintuitive, but Jonathan was almost a hacker by trade. He was constantly learning and evolving, becoming better and more sophisticated with each passing day. And while this made him a nightmare for those he targeted, it also made him a fascinating subject of study for those who were trying to catch him. The FBI was particularly intrigued by Jonathan. They had never encountered a hacker like him before, someone who was so young, so skilled and so determined. They wanted to understand what made him tick, what drove him to take on the most secure systems in the world. But, as they delved deeper into Jonathan's mind, they found themselves facing a disturbing realization. They were dealing with a hacker who was not just brilliant, but also highly disturbed. Jonathan's obsession with hacking was not just a hobby or a passion, it was an addiction. He was a digital junkie who craved the thrill of the chase, the rush of adrenaline that came with each successful hack. And as the FBI closed in on him, they knew that they were dealing with a hacker who was not just a prodigy, but a dangerous one. Jonathan was not just a kid who liked to play around with computers. He was a threat to national security, a digital terrorist who had the potential to cause untold damage. And as they prepared to bring him to justice, they knew that they were facing a challenge like no other. In the end, Jonathan was brought to justice, but not without a fight. His trial was a media sensation, with everyone eager to see what would happen to the young hacker. Some saw him as a criminal mastermind, while others saw him as a misunderstood genius. But in the end, it was neither of these. Jonathan was simply a kid who had gotten in too deep. He was charged under the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, which carries with it severe penalties. But his age was taken into consideration, and he was ultimately sentenced to probation. His computers and all of his hacking paraphernalia were seized, and he was banned from using the internet for 5 years. Today, Jonathan lives a different life. He is no longer the infamous mafia boy, but just another face in the crowd. However, there is one key difference between him and the rest. Jonathan now works on the other side of the law. He is a cybersecurity consultant who helps companies protect themselves from the kind of attacks he used to launch. And while he has never publicly commented on his past, his colleagues and friends speak highly of him. They say that he is a brilliant mind who is using his skills for good. Jonathan's story is a reminder that the world of hacking is not just a playground for nerds and misfits. It is a highly sophisticated field that requires intelligence, skill, and creativity. And while many may choose to use these skills for nefarious purposes, others, like Jonathan, find a way to use them for good. And who knows, maybe one day Jonathan will become so renowned in the field that no one will remember that he was once the infamous mafia boy. If you enjoy this story, stay tuned for more. We have countless tales of daring heists and ingenious capers that will keep you on the edge of your seat. So sit back, relax, and prepare to be amazed.